Let's take a look at the upstream and downstream enable key we have here. If I push this, it will enable the upstream key, but if I hold the shift key down, it's going to be the downstream key I'm operating by this button. And the configuration for this one can be seen in the web interface. So again, we just click the button, it's B in this case, and we see this configuration. So as expected, we have enabling of the upstream key, it's toggling, downstream key, it's set to auto. So, well, basically, I think this is as you would expect. We can select whether or not the upstream key is on ME1 or 2, which key it is, and the same goes for the downstream key. So that's kind of basic, but there are some options here, like what does toggle mean? Toggle is, as you just saw, when I push the button, it enables the key. We can see it in the ATEM software. Let's just do it. I push now the button, so it's basically on, off. So it takes into account what was the last state and changes that to the inverse. But you can also assign it to simply enable the upstream key. If for some reason you want a controller where you have two buttons and the left button will enable a key and the right button will disable the key, then you would select on and off for those keys so they work like opposite each other. Finally, we also have the hold down feature, which is useful in some cases, in particular if the input is not a button but a GPI trigger instead. That's actually kind of the same operation because the button is a binary input. This is how we think about it. It's either or, either it's pushed or it's not, while you have exactly the same for a trigger input on an I/O module. So in those cases, such as a hold down function might really make sense if you want a switch to enable a key and then the switch turned off would disable the key again, you would need a hold functionality. And then of course we have the auto, which is, it will promote a transition for fading in the upstream key. So we see the downstream key is set to auto at the moment, and if I hold the shift key and press the button, you see it performs the auto transition for the downstream key. And again, it's kind of really easy to change this. So if I boot it into configuration mode, I can change this to, let's say, it's a hold down functionality. Yeah, let's try that. And I save. So now I hold the shift key and I press the button, and you'll see the downstream key is enabled for as long as I hold down the button. So I hold it down now, it's on. I release the button, it's off, and so forth. And that's typically what you can do with a button. You can even do it for such as program and preview sources, which might feel a bit funky for you, but because when would you ever use it for a button? But actually, it could be really, we could imagine a situation where you want to be able to hold down a button to put a given source on program until you release it and it reverts back to the previous source that was there when you pushed the button. The same for toggle would be, or it could even be cycle. So if you choose the cycle option, it's programmed in a sense. So let's say we say cycle and 6, then it would, for each time you press the button, it would cycle through sources 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then over again 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. And that's how powerful this can really be configured. I think it's the same for preview. Yes, unless you don't have the hold feature, only the cycle. And you also see for program preview, you have similar options to use. For the auxiliary, you have the same, but you even have something called hold groups, which is a pretty cool concept. So hold groups means that, in particular, if you have multiple keys that is used to put a source on auxiliary when you hold it, then it will kind of have a common memory of what the previous source was. So if you're comparing sources like that, it will flip between those two, and when you release the buttons, it goes back to the original. This is in particular useful for operators of CCUs or RCPs where you have joystick override. Let's take another example where these keys would be assigned to put graphics on media players. So I want this, and this button to select still number 1, 2, 3, and 4 and put it on media player 1. So again, I boot the controller into configuration mode so we can access the web interface. So in the web interface, I will click button number 1 first, and then for the default functionality, I will select media player still, MP still, all right? So I wanted it to go on media player number 1, and I want to select still number 1. And now you see there's again the typical hold down toggle cycle. So there again you can imagine how you can actually have a toggle function that will put a still on and then fall back to the previous still when it's pushed again. The same for hold down, and even cycle. You could set up a single button here, and that's what it would do if I just kept it on cycle and selected 4, for instance. Then that button push would actually cycle through media 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the ATEM switcher. That would be pretty cool. But in this case, we decided that we just want to simply select the still with this button, and that would be still number 1. So this is what it does right now. Still number 1 goes on media player 1 as I push this button. So I'm gonna copy this configuration to the next key and the next and the next, and just change the parameters. So I now insert it here, change it to 2. I go to the next button, insert, change it to 3, insert, change it to 4, and save. The controller is booted again, and as I press these buttons, we're actually changing which stills are on media player 1. We can check it out by going to the ATEM software control, and you can see which still is currently on 1 is the one in bank number 1. That's my name tag. And I now press button number 2. So you see it changes it over there. Button number 3 changes it over there. And button number 4 it changes over there. So that's how easy it is to change this functionality. So these buttons will instead select media stills 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what if I want these buttons to not only select the right name tag, but also enable the overlay of the name tag on the video feed? It's possible to add multiple functions for each of these buttons. So it selects a still, maybe wait for a frame, and then it fades in the still or selects the still on the upstream key. And again, we do this from the web interface. So on the first button, what I need to do is to actually utilize the second line here. So we still want to select the first still and put that in media player 1. But then instead of or shift, we select and. So as the next action, I'm going to select something called wait in the system. And I decide to wait for, let's say, 400 milliseconds. So that's like 1 or 4/10 of a second. Maybe it's too much. Let's say 2/10. 1/10 should even be enough. I just want enough to make sure the still is selected, and then I enable the upstream key. So I simply press the plus icon and get another line. So let's see, I can then select ATEM upstream key, and let's just make it a toggle. That's great. So what happens now is media still number 1 is selected. We wait, and then we enable the upstream key. And when I press the button again, it will then, perform a toggle action. So this whole thing is now inserted for the second button, and all I need to do is actually change this parameter. And I insert it on the next one, change this parameter to select still 3, and then insert it again to select still number 4. And I save, and I power cycle my controller. So the controller is rebooted, and let's just first confirm that media stills are correctly selected by the buttons. So as I press button number 1, you see in bank number 1, 2, 3, and 4 over here. So this works out. Let's go to the switcher interface here. So you see currently we have actually name tag 4 on display. So as I push this button again, you see the upstream key is toggled off. And now I press this button. So I have the first name tag put on. As I press it again, it's toggled off. Press this one is put on and off again. So it's almost like a macro function, but it's really just selecting the still, wait shortly, and then enable the upstream key. Of course, I can only hope to give you an idea about how buttons can be programmed or configured in the universal firmware, the UniSketch universe. We have a manual that will be the ultimate guide to what you can do with your SKAARHOJ controller. And apart from explaining all the basics of such a controller, we have sections for each type of hardware we support. So let's just go to the ATEM section, for instance, and see how we basically would find documentation for setting sources on program. So here you can see something familiar, which is a screenshot from the web interface, and here an explanation of how this function relates to the different hardware component types that we have. So binary triggers, that would be buttons. This is explained elsewhere in the document, but it really just tells you that it will set the selected source on program. If hold down is selected, the source will fall back to the previous source, blah, blah, blah. So all the details are to be found in the manual, and this is your ultimate guide that will help you all the way through to make fantastic configurations for your SKAARHOJ controllers.